Now, voters go to the polls tomorrow in one of the most watched by-elections for years in Glasgow East, one of the safest Labour seats. It's been seen as a real test for Gordon Brown's ability to recover from a series of setbacks over the past few months. Our political editor, Michael Crick, is there with the latest of his reports.
Piped through the back alley of a Glasgow shopping centre, Margaret Curran, the woman charged with saving Gordon Brown from extreme embarrassment tomorrow and perhaps saving his job. This contest was sparked by the sudden resignation of the Labour MP David Marshall through, we were told, ill health. Though there's huge speculation in Scotland that there were other reasons.
Can I thank you so much for coming here today?
In particular, it's thought that Mr Marshall was worried about public exposure of the extent to which his use of parliamentary allowances was benefiting his family. First, over the employment of his wife and daughter, and details of MPs employing family members are due to be made public in September. Second, over claiming thousands of pounds in rent for the use of his Glasgow home as his constituency office.
David Marshall, 18,775 votes.
But now the man elected the honourable member for Glasgow East only 3 years ago has suddenly vanished from public view, become a non-person, it seems, as if airbrushed from Labour history. Nowhere could I find David Marshall mentioned on Margaret Curran's many campaign leaflets or on her website. Yet election candidates are normally keen to acknowledge their party predecessors. This is David Marshall's home, the one which is said to have earned him much rent by doubling as his constituency office for many years.
With some nice flower beds, nice colourful ones, but there's something missing about this house. There isn't a single Labour poster.
It was also revealed this week that Marshall's daughter, Christina, had a couple of businesses registered here, though when I rang her, she wasn't that keen to talk.
Can you tell me how many members of the family were actually on his parliamentary payroll? You're going to end the conversation. Hello? You there?
But in the final days of this campaign, Mr Marshall has become something of an issue.
The question particularly I'd like the Labour candidate to answer is how she doesn't know where the MP's office is, given that she's been an MSP for 9 years. But, you know, we're fighting an election on a very strong issue.
It wasn't really an MP's office?
I have no idea, but the Labour candidate said she didn't know where the MP's office was. Now, I don't think it's credible you can be an MSP for 9 years and not know that. So that's really the number one question I think should be asked.
Well, I think at a time when MPs are, under attack for the amount of money they earn and for the expenses, I think MPs should be open and transparent. I think David Marshall has to do the same, and we want to have assurances that he hasn't been wasting taxpayers' money and that the huge amounts of money that have gone into his constituency over the last 10 to 15 years have been spent wisely. So we want some answers on that issue.
So how does Margaret Curran respond?
When people like yourself come to the East End of Glasgow and they talk about issues like that, when you listen to the families as I have over the past few weeks, and indeed as I have for many years, they're hard pressed. They've got family pressures. They've got issues around education and health. Those are the issues we should be focused on.
People are concerned, obviously, that public money is properly spent. Now, another issue is his constituency office at Entercombe Street. Now, you were the MSP. Did you visit that as his constituency office? Did you ever visit it?
Can I tell you something about the kind of MP I'll be?
Did you visit his office?
Hang on a wee second and let me answer.
Did you ever visit that office?
Hang on a wee second.
Was it his office?
Hang on a wee second. I'll tell you the kind of MP I'll be. I'll publish all my expenses. I'll make sure everybody knows where my office is, and I'll make sure I employ staff to represent. Now, that's the kind of MP I'm going to be.
But
Thank you very much.
Will you clear up this issue, if you will, the MP? I mean, after all, it's a matter of...
I'll be focused on my job.
Are you going to clear it all up?
I am standing for election, and the kind of MP I'll be is what's been tested in this election. Now, I think I've got a track record in this constituency, and I think people will listen to that.
But Gordon Brown wants openness and transparency when it comes to MPs.
And I'll be a very open and transparent MP.
And you will help reveal all about Mr Marshall's claims.
I'm focused on the future. I will be an open and transparent MP. I guarantee you that. I will publish all my expenses.
And his?
I'll publish. I'm responsible for my. David Marshall is unwell. I don't particularly want to talk about David Marshall. I think that's disrespectful. With the greatest respect, I'm standing here on my record, the kind of MP I want to be. I'll be an open and transparent MP. I'll publish all my expenses, and I'll work my socks off for the people of the East End of Glasgow.
Sorry, my name is Ian Robertson.
Yes.
I'm the candidate for the Scottish Liberal Democrats in the Glasgow East by-election.
The Liberal Democrat, Ian Robertson, aged just 30, may well be an MP one day, but I'd be astonished if it's for Glasgow East.
You are
the Scottish Liberal Democrats, yes.
Mr Robertson's been a pretty impressive candidate, yet paradoxically, his party's failed to make much impact with the voters, and he could well be pushed into 4th place by the resurgent Conservatives. Davena Rankin's a distinctive candidate, another feisty, strong-willed Glaswegian woman.
Do you agree with your party on everything, or is there anything on which you might dissent?
We're working hard with Annabelle to make sure we can bring forward
I'm talking
positive
about
policies.
you as a candidate.
I think what Annabelle's done in the Scottish Parliament has been fantastic.
But we're talking about the Westminster Parliament here. I mean, how would you be different from any other Conservative?
Well, what I'd be doing if I was elected here, I'd be a Glasgow MP. That'd be one difference to start with. And what I'd be doing would be working with David Cameron and George Osborne. He's brought forward the fuel price regulator, 5p for litre petrol. That'd make a big difference in the lives of Glasgow East.
The Tories, under their formidable Scottish leader Annabel Goldie, could pull off an unusual feat, bucking the trend in by-elections where parties who start 3rd or 4th find their votes squeezed by the front runners.
Who will you be voting for?
The Scottish Unionists. The Scottish Unionist Party.
Right, the Conservatives?
Yep. Most likely Labour.
Probably Labour?
Most likely.
Is that who you voted for last time?
Yeah.
How do you think Gordon Brown's done this last year?
Terrible.
Terrible, but you still might vote for him?
Yeah.
Who are you voting for on Thursday?
Will be Margaret Curran of the Labour Party.
You'd be Margaret Curran?
Yes.
Do you normally vote Labour?
Yes.
Did you think about switching to anybody?
Not really, no. I think that she'd be more committed to the East End of Glasgow.
Right, so you think she personally is perhaps the best candidate?
Yes.
What about Gordon Brown? How do you think he's done?
Probably not so good, but we're interested in the East End of Glasgow at the moment, so I think she's the best candidate.
I think it'd be good if SNP get in, to see what it would be like anyway, see how it would work, you know.
The SNP's John Mason has been out so much with his party leader, it almost looks as if Alex Salmond, and not Mason, is the Scottish nationalist candidate. He's picked up votes from Labour, certainly, but not enough perhaps for the earthquake Mr Salmond promises, an SNP victory of historic proportions. Since Bob McIntyre won Motherwell in February 1945, the SNP has won just 5 by-elections in history.
Winifred Margaret Ewing, Scottish nationalist. 18,397.
Winnie Ewing famously took Hamilton in 1967. Margot MacDonald, Glasgow Govan, 6 years later. And her husband, Jim Sillars, the same seat in 1988. Before Rosanna Cunningham took Perth and Kinross 13 years ago.
The lesson of the 5 by-elections is the SNP vote is quite elastic in by-elections, and one of the significant factors in the SNP breaking through and winning is character, is personality, is someone who can shape an entire campaign. Winnie had that, Margot had that, Jim Sillars, and John Mason just doesn't have that kind of star quality.
Do you think that you're of the same calibre as the other people who've won by-elections for the SNP, people like Margot MacDonald and Jim Sillars and Winnie Ewing? It takes big names, doesn't it? Big characters to win by-elections for the SNP.
There are some people that talk more than me, and there are some people that talk louder than me. But I've been a councillor for 10 years. I've been elected 4 times, so I think I have a certain amount of confidence from people in the East End.
Despite Labour's early problems over finding a candidate, the party's run a professional operation here, sidestepping the David Marshall issue and concentrating on a nominee who's quite respected in Glasgow's East End. Yet, it's also been a contest in which one other name has been almost as unmentionable as Mr. Marshall. That of James Gordon Brown.
And Michael joins me from Glasgow now. We've heard a bit from David Marshall himself tonight, haven't we?
Yes, it's his first intervention, believe it or not, in the campaign in any way. I think everybody was assuming that Mr. Marshall was so ill that he couldn't say anything on any topic. But tonight he's actually issued a statement to Newsnight in response to a letter and an email and a text message that I sent him and his family this morning. Now, I asked him how much he paid members of his family last year and which members of his family from his parliamentary allowances, how much he was claiming from his a different allowance for using his home as a constituency office. And this is the statement which Mr. Marshall has issued tonight. In 29 years as a Member of Parliament, I have never claimed parliamentary allowances for rent, rates or utilities for my family home. Everything has been passed to the relevant parliamentary authorities. Should any parliamentary authority have any questions, and I can't imagine that they would have, I will be more than happy to assist with these. He goes on, I have been proud to serve the people of the East End of Glasgow for 36 years, both as a councillor and MP, and in that period the welfare of my constituents was in the uppermost of my mind at all times. Now, the problem with that statement is that Mr. Marshall rather confuses two different allowances. First is the allowance that MPs are allowed to claim from Parliament for having to have a second home. The rules are quite clear. He wouldn't be allowed to claim that allowance for his Glasgow home anyway, because that quite clearly is his main family home. The second allowance they're allowed to claim is for office accommodation, which in Mr. Marshall's case is actually was in his Glasgow home. And it's still not clear how much, or if anything, he was claiming in rent for that. And he really hasn't answered my questions adequately at all, and particularly the question of how much he was paying members of his family. And the overriding questions here is, were members of his family genuinely doing work for him in order to earn that money? And second, was his constituency home genuinely being used as an office? And the way that Margaret Curran reacted to my questions today, I think it does really raise that question. Clearly, she doesn't seem to have, it seems doubtful that she ever visited it during 9 years as an MSP for the same, covering much of the same area as Mr. Marshall's constituency.
Michael, thanks very much. And there are more details of all the candidates in the Glasgow East by-election on the BBC website.